Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you the battle group overview for the 9th Panzer Division, this being the second video of 4 of the second wave DLC divisions. So let's start off by looking at the Recon Tab. So in the Recon Tab we have Panzer 1Cs, and for those of you who are familiar with World War II will be quite enthused to see these, since they are a primary part of the Blitzkrieg strategy moving into France in the early war phase. But yeah, really nice unit. Comes with 2 machine guns. One has AP shells, allows it for 3 AP in game, and that's at 600 meter range. Both sort of machine guns have 600 meter range, which gives it 14 HE to put on target, which is actually a hell of a lot and will demolish infantry at close range. The other beauty of this is it can clean up half tracks early in the game and supports your infantry very well as providing the recon that comes with it. Now, alongside some command, these can do very well, since they will be 2-star veterans, considering I've brought in both of the cards of the 1-star veteran Panzer 1Cs. Now, the other thing to consider is that you can maybe drop out a card of the Panzer 1Cs with veterancy for the extra availability. I would maybe say do this if you want more mobile recon in the later phases to accompany your tanks, but generally by then the Panzer 1Cs become pretty obsolete. We also have the Speertroops available, and that's pretty staple for most German divisions, but Speertroop, pretty solid unit. They have the machine gun for long range engagements, although likely most of the time you should have these on return fire, because in the 9th Panzer Division you have a pretty damn low availability of infantry recon. So only 3 in phase A, and for me 3 in phase B. Now you can see that in phase B they get more veterancy but stay the same in terms of availability, and that is a trend that continues throughout the 9th Panzer, so just bear that in mind. The other 2 units that you can consider in phase B are the 2341 and the 2343. The 2343 used to be good when it had the very high optics, but that was patched out a while back now, and therefore without the veterancy I don't think either of these units are really worth their cost in the 9th Panzer Division. Let's move on to the Infantry Tab. So in the Infantry Tab, like I mentioned before, all of the units, they stay the same availability, but they increase in veterancy as we go through. So in phase A, I'm going to be bringing in 2 units of Panzer Grenadiers, and these are your staple infantry. They have the 5 HE at close range, they have 11 HE at long range, and they have the Panzerfaust, which is good for area of denial around towns and so on. So that's quite nice indeed. I'm accompanying those by a Pionierführer that is being brought in a 251-9. The beauty of the Pionierführer is it does have a 20 HE power grenade, so in forests or town engagements you can quickly lob that grenade and get your Pionierführer out of there in order to delete like a unit of infantry, which kind of pays these off quite well. But then the other great thing about this card is that you do have the 251-9. And this is 6 AP, 9 HE at 1000 meter range. It also will have 2-star veterancy if you drop it out next to the Pionierführer. So that's really good, honestly. 6 AP is enough to penetrate quite a few early game units. And 9 HE is the same as an IG, which basically means that you're going to be pinning down enemy infantry quite quickly and killing it off relatively quickly as well. Further to that, also has a 600 range machine gun, which means that using this around the 600 meter range mark is actually really nice indeed, because not only is it accurate with its main gun, but it also has the machine gun fire support, which can tear apart infantry very quickly. So pretty nice combination, and yeah, it's something that I like to use myself a lot in phase A. Other things that you can bring in phase A include Panzer Grenadiers in half tracks, and there is an argument to be made that you should probably have 1 card of Panzer Grens in the Open Blitz, 1 card in the half tracks in Phase A. But in general, I find that I have enough 20mm autocannon units to support my infantry anyway, and the 9th Panzer tends to work around your infantry and 20mm units in Phase A working hand in hand to take ground early on. So I don't feel like the half tracks are necessary, and there are better things to spend those points on. Other choices could be the Sturm Pioneers. Good choice if you know you're going into close quarters combat. Like if your lobby is set up for a city map or a forest map, having Sturm Pioneers early on in the game is actually a pretty nice advantage to have sometimes against certain divisions. Like if you're playing against the 1st Panzer or the 15th Infantry Scots, their rifles won't have flamethrowers, so you can definitely take advantage of that with Sturm Pioneers, and that's just more of a situational card to take if you need them. The other thing that you can bring in Phase A is the MG42s, and whilst MG42s are always wonderful to have, in this case the availability, the need for higher health units prevents you really from finding a space for them in your division. Moving on to Phase B, there is the Panzergrenadier available. 3 of those, 2-star veterancy, do have the smoke grenades, which are pretty damn useful honestly sometimes. Especially if you have them, for example, with an AT gun, and your AT gun's being shot at, you can use the Pioneer Fielder to just smoke it off quickly and get your AT gun out of there. Stop the direct line of fire onto those. But in Phase B for me, I have a card of the Pioneer Fielder in the Open Blitz, and then I have the Panzergrenadiers in the half tracks. Now the reason I have Panzergrenadiers in half tracks in Phase B as opposed to Phase A is because by Phase B, a lot of your 20mm autocannon units will either be dead or obsolete, and there's just not enough of them to leave them with your Panzergrenadiers, because most of the time you'll be using them elsewhere. So having the half tracks to support your infantry instead in Phase B is a relatively good idea in my opinion, and you will have more points to spend on your units, and therefore can start to afford the half tracks then. The other choices for Phase B are another card of Pioneer Fielder in the 251-9, this time a 2-star veteran one, which is pretty damn good honestly, but just don't find the availability for them. And then the MG42s again, 1-star veterancy, higher than the Phase A, but same rule applies, same availability, 1 step up, and just no room for them really. Too low health, and you want to have Panzergrenadiers and Pioneers are just way more versatile. Now moving into Phase C, same thing, Pioneers in Open Blitz, Panzergrens in half tracks, 2-star veterans this time, same availability, and it's quite simply just to maintain the availability going into the later game, because as you start working around your Tigers in Phase C, you will definitely need infantry to accompany them and make sure that you are clearing the tree lines either side of you so that you can keep the aggression up in those later phases. It's pretty damn important. So yeah, that's basically my infantry setup. Now this is probably the tab that I'm least confident with, and I'm sure many of you guys have different setups for your infantry tabs, but in my opinion it gives me enough availability to work around, probably almost the highest availability that I can have, and that just works for me. It means I can support my tanks where I need to throughout the game. There are arguments of course for other units, but I'm sure you guys will let me know in the comments. Let's move on to the tank tab. So in the tank tab we start to see some more interesting units, starting with the Befehl Panzer II-C. This is something that's pretty familiar to us. It's used in the 12th SS Panzer quite a lot, but in the 9th Panzer here, very very good indeed. Accompanies the Panzer II looks very well, and also the Panzer I-C from the Recon tab. So the Befehl Panzer II definitely a must-have. 2 of those with the command radius. It's also 1-star veteran itself. Great unit to have about. Decent AP for penetrating enemy tanks at close range, and also half tracks and destroys infantry very very easily at the 600 meter range, where it can fire both its 9 HE from its main gun and 7 HE from its machine gun at the same time. Same goes for the looks, same deal. It's just got a ton of damage at close range. And the beauty of the looks is it's very fast as well. It has the 45 mile per hour or 45 kilometer per hour speed off-road, 75 kilometer per hour speed on-road, and yeah, it just whips around, can kill off pretty decent units just by zooming up to them and yeah, just shooting at them. Alongside the Befehl Panzer II as well, these 1-star Panzer II looks are 2-star, and that is very, very useful indeed for making them accurate enough with their 6 accuracy to hit things like AT guns and kill them before the AT guns can even kill them back, which is quite frustrating for your enemy. And generally, if you can kill the enemy AT guns in Phase A as the 9th Panzer, you can roll over your enemy very, very quickly due to these tanks being very quick. Completely Blitzkrieg style, honestly, which is really, really cool. You can get cards of these which give you more availability, but after Phase A, I do find that the Panzer II looks and the Panzer IICs do become quite redundant, because you'll end up being up against more things like M4 Shermans, and they just don't really match up as well. So in Phase B, it's time to roll out the Panzer IVs, and that's what I'm going to be doing. The Panzer IV-Js with the 1-star veterancy, you get 5 of those, accompanying them by a Befehl Panzer IV-H, and generally I would buy in the Befehl Panzer IV-H before the Panzer IV-Js. The Panzer IV-Js, in my opinion, are very, very cost efficient, but they only really work at longer ranges because they don't have the increased aim time that the Panzer IV-H has. So if you want extra aim time and you're going into closer range engagements, the Panzer IV-H is actually a lot better. The difference in terms of the actual stats on the tab isn't much different. So you think you're probably looking at that thinking, you're paying for a Panzer IV-H for 15 more points and the only thing you're getting is 1 side armor. That's what it looks like. But there's hidden stats in this game, and one of them is that the turn time of this turret is a lot faster on a Panzer IV-H, which allows it to aim faster, and that can make the difference between getting a shot in first and getting a shot in second. And if you're getting a shot in second, you have a chance to be killed. So yeah, that's just the name of the game really, and something to bear in mind between those two Panzer IV variants. I like to play around the Panzer IV-Js. It's just a personal preference. The low cost works very well with the B phase income, so that's why I like the Panzer IV-Js in this division. Generally though, if you're less experienced with the game, Panzer IV-Hs are the way to go. The other choice of units are Stug 4s, or Stug 3, sorry, in Phase B, but for 150 points, they are pretty damn expensive, honestly. They do have 2-star veterancy and 3-star veterancy with a command nearby, which can make them pretty damn strong, but without the turret rotation, I think you're much better off just going for the Panzer IV-H and maintaining the availability there with the 9th Panzer in Phase B. Yeah, definitely good idea to keep up your availability with this division, just so that you have the momentum to keep moving forwards. In Phase C, this is where you get access to the Tigers. The Tigers are definitely a must-have in this division moving into Phase C. They are the only decent tank that you have for this phase compared to other Axis armor, so a must-have really. Then I'm supporting those with more Panzer IV-Js. Quite simply, you can roll these out incredibly quickly. The income again staying the same price as these Panzer IV-Js, and it works out very nicely. Again, if you're less experienced, use the Panzer IV-Hs. They're a lot easier to use, quite simply because of that increased aim time. Then we move on to the support tab. Now the support tab is very nice in this division. I just wish I had a few more slots, because you only have 4 slots to choose from. And choosing between like the 258 and the 250-116 is a pretty big choice indeed actually, because this 258 can be quite nice fire support at close range for your infantry. But the Flampanzers are just beautiful in Phase A. They really are, and they kind of, take the cake compared to the 258. If you get into a town engagement with the 9th Panzer, expect one of these to be rolling down the street towards you. They can make a lot of infantry surrender very, very quickly indeed. They do a ton of damage, considering the fact they have 2 flamethrowers on them, and it's a 260 meter range as well, which is quite annoying to deal with sometimes. If, for example, you are allies and you have your bazookas, you're going to have to make another 60 meter range before you can fire that thing at a Flampanzer, and meanwhile the Flampanzer will be burning the crap out of your men, especially if, for example, the Panzer Grenadiers are revealing the infantry. So the Flampanzer is just brilliant, really, really good close range unit for taking on towns, and also can be pretty decent in forest areas where there are a lot of roads, where it can zoom around very quickly, because it does have a stabilizer, which means it can fire on the move. Again, hidden stats doesn't tell you that, but it can fire on the move, which is quite hard to deal with. You can have it zooming around all over the place and just burning people alive. It's pretty tempting to have an Opel Blitz munition in Phase A to accompany your mortars, but due to the lack of space on the division to choose that, I had to, avoid bringing supply in Phase A in favour of bringing more in Phase B. So that's where I'm going with those units in Phase A. In Phase B, you do get access to the 263, which is a very funky looking unit, but just great, for the extra mobile command that you pretty much lack in this division due to low availability across the board. So supplementing with 3 263s in Phase B is a nice idea in my opinion. Opel Blitz munitions are going to be brought in Phase C due to having an extra availability there. And then we have the Grille, which I'm going to be bringing 1 card of. 1000 meter range, 27 HE power, can be very, very useful in certain situations where you want to sort of push into a town maybe, or push towards maybe some forests. You've got some infantry to deal with, you've dealt with the enemy tanks with your own, or you have like your AT dealing with it, and this Grille is free to fire at enemy infantry. Like, that is the beauty of this Grille. It can literally just demolish enemy infantry. It does only have 15 shells, you've got to bear that in mind, but yeah, very, very useful in certain situations. Moving on to the anti-tank tab. Now this is another place where the 9th Panzer are quite interesting. I do have 1 card of the Panzerschrecks in Phase A. I like these for holding choke points and for assisting my own infantry in towns and forests early on. Just allows you that extra range, the 250 meter range on those, in order to take out things like half-tracks and tanks that are just annoying you early in the game. I don't actually have any AT guns in Phase A, I'm relying on Marder 3s, and this is a nice choice because these Marder 3s, a lot like Hellcats from the 4th Armoured, have the 1200 meter range in Phase A with 13 AP. The only bad thing about the Marder 3 compared to the Hellcat is it's not as fast, and of course it's a self-propelled gun, so it's going to have to turn its entire hull in order to get on target, which can make it rather vulnerable indeed. You need to make sure it's lined up before you go for those engagements, and that's just a matter of micromanagement. But yeah, Pack 40 is very, very strong indeed, and can penetrate most tanks, pretty much all tanks in Phase A, other than maybe an AVRE at max range. So you got that going for you, and a very useful unit to have. There's not many things as well that can like strafe this to death in Phase A. I think I've had these killed by B-26Bs before, and also just bombing strikes, but that tends to happen like into Phase B, where you can then bring in some more reinforcements and you will be starting to rely on your Panzer IVs a bit more. So there's that. Moving into Phase B, I am going to bring in some Pack 40s on the ground. This is quite simply to set up ambushes and just have them as fire support for infantry as well. They do have the HE on them, which is pretty damn useful. You also have the HE on the Marders as well, so bear that in mind, but there's a lot less shells on a Marder 3 than there is on the standard Pack 40 gun. You've only got 10 shots on a Marder 3, whereas on the Pack 40 on the ground you have the 20 HE shells, which is pretty nice for pinning enemy infantry, but can often give away the Pak 40, and which leads to it being artied to death. So there's that to think about as well. But either way, still definitely worth having. And then I have extra availability of Marder 3s in Phase B with the 1-star veterancy, because if you bring in the 2-star veteran one, you only get one of them. And again, availability is a big issue with this division in general. Now moving into Phase C, you can get 1-star Pak 40s, and you can also get Jagdpanthers or Jagdpanzers, but considering you'll be spending most of your points on your Tigers, these units aren't necessarily needed in the later phases, and you can supplement in other ways. As for anything else, I think that's pretty much the anti-tank tab done and dusted. Some people prefer to have AT guns over Marders. That's a personal preference thing, I think, and I'm sure you guys will let me know if you prefer that or not in the comments. Let's move on to the anti-air tab. So the anti-air, again, low availability across the board. We've got in Phase B 2 cards of Flak 36s with the 1-star veterancy, and then I have the 2-star Flak 88 in Phase C to kind of just accompany the Flak 36s, and also, you know, maybe to snipe enemy vehicles on the ground if my Tigers are struggling. But yeah, in general, the Flak 41 is pretty useful. I would say another good choice would be the mobile wagon, like taking out the 88 here and putting in 2 mobile wagons, because these have 13 HE at 1000 meter range, and you get like the 2 availability, which definitely makes a pretty big difference. But I like having the versatility of this 88 to both snipe ground units and air units, and that's just, again, my choice. If you aren't as confident using the 88s and repositioning them and stuff, then definitely go for the mobile wagon. It will do you a lot of favors. So that's just pretty much the anti-air tab. The other choices are pretty meager. You have the 20 mils in Phase A, which are just terrible. 251-17s and Flak 38 20 mils. These are just awful. They don't really do anything. They just tickle enemy aircraft unless you have an absolute butt ton of them. And by then you've probably spent way more points on AA than you would otherwise have to. The SDKFZ-71 is a pretty decent unit actually for Phase A, in that it has the 15 HE at 800 meter range, basically a flak filling on a half track, but it's just not enough availability to be worth bringing. In Phase B, same deal, flag filling on a truck. The reason I don't bring this one though is because it's pretty easy to kill. You can strafe these to death. You can, well, I would say you can try and strafe these to death, although the flag filling will likely pin you down before that happens. But the main thing is just they can just get bombed and die very easily. They can also be killed by MGs and stuff. It's just, they're just not particularly very strong units, and they get killed relatively easy. So I just prefer relying on Flak 36s that are not only harder to see, but maybe harder to kill from random bombing strikes. So moving on to the artillery tab, things are pretty simple. You have the option of mortar half tracks in Phase A, and I'm going to be taking 3 of them. We have 2 availability on 1 card, which are unvetted, and then you have 1 card of 2-star veterancy, and it's definitely worth having this 2-star veteran 251-2, just because it's pretty accurate and can fire very quickly, so you can take out AT guns very easily with it. And if you do manage to do so in Phase A, it will do a lot of favors in that you can then overrun your enemy with your 20 mil units. In Phase B, you have the access to the BEO Panzer IV, but is not often used, I don't think. The field battery off map can be nice in certain situations, but in general, I would say I don't find a use for it. And the Panzer IV itself, although it is useful afterwards, just, I don't know, I feel like we don't have the activation slot to bring this in, because it doesn't have off-map that is effective enough and lethal enough. In Phase C, it's all about the Hummels. And these Hummels are pretty nice. They have the 27 HE at 2,800 meter range. I take the 2-star veteran one. Again, increased rate of fire and accuracy is very nice indeed, and it allows this thing to hit its mark and you kill those units that you despise every single time. Whereas with the unvetted Hummels, you may be not so lucky, and they tend to use up quite a lot of your supply, which has already probably been used up on your mortars. So yeah, if you had access to more supply, maybe bring in 2 Hummels on the card of 2, but without that extra supply, the 2-star Hummel on its own will have to do. You can also get the 2-star BEO Panzer IV in Phase C, but veterancy doesn't affect the off-map, so there's that. And in general, I don't want to be spending that much points on a Panzer IV in the 9th Panzer division. Let's move on finally to the Air Tab, where we will be seeing another lack of choice really. The Air Tab not being the best tab for the 9th Panzer, but still has some use. In Phase A, got the Me-109G2 BR-21 with the 225 HE power rockets. Can take out 5 health AT guns in one shot sometimes, which is very, very nice indeed and very useful. So that can again lead the way to a nice blitzkrieg push. The Focke-Wulf 190 A8 is also a very decent fighter for Phase A, but having only one fighter available is pretty damn risky. You don't necessarily want to be using fighters on their own. You want to be using them in groups of 2 or 3 so that you have an advantage over your enemy. Storches in this division aren't very useful at all. Into Phase B, you do have access to the Focke-Wulf 190 A8s without veterancy, which is the main reason that I don't bring them. And you also have access to Focke-Wulf 190 G3s that have 4 5 HE power bombs. Now these can stun things, which can be quite nice, but in general I find that they don't do anything, they don't have any lethality, and that really frustrates me, so I don't really like using them. And they sort of have the same agility as an A8, and they can be used as fighters, but just in general I much prefer keep the activation slots for the Phase C units which are actually useful. So for example, the Focke-Wulf 190 A8 here with 2-star veterancy, which is really good if you accompany it with the Me-109G2 BR-21 that you have from Phase A. And then you have the Focke-Wulf 190 G1s, and these G1s, they have 25 HE power bombs, which are just so damn useful for taking out 17 pounders in the later game. Keep your Tigers safe, bomb those 17 pounders. That is what you want to be doing with these Focke-Wulf 190 G1s, and they do lack the agility that the Focke-Wulf 190 A8 has, but if you use the Focke-Wulf 190 to sort of bait out an enemy plane, you can shoot it down with this Focke-Wulf 190 A8 very easily indeed. So that's really, really nice and something to consider. And that's pretty much your lot. That is the 9th Panzer Division. I would say it's all about taking out enemy AT guns in Phase A. Use your Recon, your Panzer 1Cs and the Speertrupp to find them, take them out with either the 20mm from your Panzer 1Cs, Panzer 2C, Panzer 2 Lux, or you can like mortar them with the SDKFZ 251-2, or you can hit them with the Me-109 G2 BR-21. You've got a few choices there in how you want to take out those AT guns. Once you have, you just got to play around infantry-based AT, like bazookas and stuff, but if you're just a little bit careful about that, you can definitely just run them over, get your infantry to find out the location of enemy infantry, and then you can just use a Flampanzer or something, as well as your 20mm, to do the job. If you're up against something a bit armoured, maybe like an M4, then the Marder 3s are going to be your choice of unit, and once you've cut through those, again, the Panzer 2s can just go wild and really give you a huge advantage in the early game. In Phase B, for me, the way I play this division is all about the Panzer IV-J spam and basically getting to a point where you can start to really seriously overrun your enemy with higher availability. Like you can have a lot of Panzer IV-Js on the field, and as long as you're not against any super heavy like 1,200 meter range engagement units, you can really do a lot of damage. Like there are some divisions, like especially the airborne divisions, that you can really just run over with a Panzer IV-J push. So there's that to consider. If you're up against something that's a bit harder, like the 3rd Armoured, then the Marder 3s and the Pack 40s will be the way to go. Just got to try and find those ambushing shots, or maybe just wait to phase C, where you can gain access to the Tigers, and the Tigers can tend to deal with most allied armour, other than things like jumbos, I guess, in the later phases. And you always have the Focke-Wulf 190G1s to accompany those, and I think that's definitely a combination that you need to use in the later phases. Tiger E's with the Focke-Wulf 190G1s, if you have control of the skies, makes things a lot easier. 17 pounders will be dying. You can also bomb enemy tanks that are a threat and get the job done that way. But there are other options. You do have the Hummel, which you can use along the way. And if you're struggling with killing infantry in phase B, then the Griller is your choice. Make sure you get your anti-air up in phase B, as you will definitely need it to keep your Marders alive, and other weaker units like your Panzers, because bigger bombs can definitely kill them off. Anyway, that's pretty much your lot. Let me know what you guys think of my division in the comments. Maybe give me some ideas of what you use in your divisions. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.